good morning and a very warm welcome to Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Road, Colombo. And joining us on our new set is former diplomat and senior journalist Bandula Jayasekara. Good morning, Bandula.
Morning for us. New set and a new beginning today.
Indeed, new beginnings, and we're delighted to welcome this morning as well Mr. Asoka Abe Gunawardena, the chairperson of SEMA, and a political analyst. I prefer that better than the first. And how are you today?
Fine, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning to you. And Sri Lanka wakes up to all sorts of news this morning, every morning. But one of the main things that's on people's minds is that the prices are rising. And no matter the promises made, nothing appears to be done. We are told that a monumental blunder has been made at Matala Airport, adding insult to injury. Now they're saying that the paddy dust has damaged the very sensitive scanning equipment. Why on earth they didn't think of that before is beyond me. Bandula, what do you say about these?
I would say, even though for us governments change, the good things must be appreciated and made use of. You know, we have this culture of just criticizing everything what whoever has done. So that's the way we got to be, you know, politically mature. And then move on with the good things. Don't criticize for the sake of criticize. If you look in the past, when UNP comes, its buses are painted in green, the CTB, that line, then SLF became, it's in blue. Things have to change.
Indeed, there should be really more, they should take more pride in matters national.
Yeah, that's true. That's what is lacking.
Sri Lanka first and everything else last.
And if the people the politicians also would work like the private sector, I'm sure they'll do better, you know, will understand, be progressive.
Indeed. Another matter that Sri Lanka has should have woken up to on Saturday morning, because the Supreme Court made its order on Friday, towards the end of the day on Friday, is the application made by the former chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka, Nalaka Godaheva, where he sought the intervention of the Supreme Court to stay any possible attempt to arrest him for a matter that the FCID were inquiring. Well, the Supreme Court has deliberated and given its order, and the order is that Dr. Godaheva's application to prevent his imminent arrest has been dismissed, and that will give the FCID the necessary impetus to carry on with their investigation without any excuses. Isn't that good news, Asoka?
Certainly, that's a good news, but it's a responsibility for the FCID to react to that in a positive way, because they were not that result-oriented in the recent past, and the issues they discussed was not the major issues the country, the people were looking at. So it should take the responsibility and react positively towards achieving certain results. Otherwise, we will be still in the same culture. We won't be able to change the culture for the future.
Yes, because that was one of the odd things, wasn't it, Bandula? Because the minute the FCID make an application, or where it becomes almost apparent and imminent arrest will be made, people trot off to the Supreme Court, which is of course their right, but it appears to the general public that this was another exercise in getting away with it.
Yeah, also for us, I must add, you know, with like since Asoka is also here, because President Maithripala Sirisena has accused and blamed the FCID over the weekend in Polonnaruwa, saying that the former service chiefs who were diplomats were summoned without his knowledge, and he wasn't very pleased with it.
Indeed, perhaps they ought to have sent him a note, though my sources reveal that those three persons were questioned because they were abroad, and that they had been purportedly or allegedly brought back to Sri Lanka to help with the presidential campaign. And so there was a question as to who paid for those expenses, because clearly it wasn't a matter of...
Yeah, for us, I can add to that, because this has happened. See, it's, you know, you don't need to question them, question the foreign secretary. You know, that is where it's done. So you don't, I mean, when you are asked, no, I have served, and you know, we were asked to come. So what happens when you are asked to come, you come, you are ordered to come.
And
so not worth asking these people.
So does that mean, Bandula, that there is a distinct possibility that you too will be summoned to the FCID?
Yeah, I'm sure, you know, most welcome, you know, and I will go to the FCID with you. Since you are
I know the way. A relative owns a building down there.
Yeah, the thing is, this is what I said, sometimes this is made a media spectacle. You have to ask the foreign secretary. And then, you know, who sent the letter? No diplomat can come without proper approval or asked to come. Even on a private visit, they have to get a clearance. They have to get a, we will say, for example, if you are in Toronto to go to Ottawa, you have to get approval from the foreign ministry. So this is really a waste of time. You can always question the foreign secretary.
I want also to ask Ashoka. Ashoka, since January, I wasn't very good at arithmetic, but I make out that it's about 10 months since Captain Mahinda was sent back to Medamulini. Have you noticed a change? It's 10 months.
Well, from looking at the duration, I mean, not myself, everybody is not satisfied with the performance or the results. So we need to, I mean, past is past, we need to have some adjustments in order to achieve something in the future. That's the most important aspect. Even the now the issues we are discussing, I am little bit worried, because the most of the issues discussed is relating to the elections. But we made a move prior to the election because of the things happened prior to that.
Right.
So I don't think, I mean, I look this as these ordinary issues. Those are not the serious issues that we need to be discussed, and we need to rectify those things, because the same thing may happen in the future. For us to have a different environment, we need to tackle the core issues which led towards this, let's say, sort of corrupt related charges and the issues. So my gut feeling is that the issues they are raising, the investigations happening, is not what we were looking at. We were looking at the serious issues which related to the development projects, the corruption behind mega projects. Those things, it's nothing happening.
I quite agree with you that some of these investigations seem almost frivolous, even though they also need investigations. The focus, for example, I would have been delighted if the new government's focus was on the raping of the stock exchange. That entire exercise threatened the very fabric of Sri Lanka's financial system. We also had an institution that was operating, offering huge sums of so-called interest, and giving a credit card or a charge card. I'm of course talking about a very well publicized matter, which is the Golden Key matter. Now there are 9,054 depositors who lost their money. They are not called depositors. Now I have an email from some one of those depositors or customers who tells me that in spite of the fanfare emanating from the Ministry of Finance to repay some of these monies by taking in the assets of Golden Key and then the government advancing the money, most of these people have not been paid. And this person who sent me an email says that it is nothing more than an election gundu. What do you think? Is it the stock exchange also an election gundu?
It looks like, you know, I mean, it looks like now, see, what happens is everybody feels free and the corruptions go on.
Yes, we must acknowledge, of course, that the very fact that Ashoka, you and I are here on this network and everybody is present means that at least in terms of this ambience, this fear psychosis that has affected the media, has apparently been lifted. So we do acknowledge that. However, that doesn't mean that you can bias and not investigate these very, very serious matters. The raping of the stock exchange, this pumping and dumping. What have they done about it? What has the SEC done? Mr. Tilak Karunaratne, the chairman of the SEC, was on one of our programs, and he said that he was going to reopen these files. We haven't heard from Mr. Tilak Karunaratne. And Tilak, if you're watching, come on our show and tell us what you've done, because the public are growing very, very worried, aren't they?
Definitely.
And what about nepotism? Nepotism is also still very much in play. Is it, will nepotism ever end, Asoka?
Well, that looks like part of the culture itself, because I mean, we should have get rid of this very soon. We should have done that, but it's not happening. So I mean, I'm not sure how we can improve the situation, how we can build up a culture, build up the capacity of the people, so that such things will not happen in the future. So we need to look into ways and means of doing that. It's true that those who are responsible, they should take the responsibility. But we should have a mechanism as a whole, as a country, as a society, to avoid these things happening.
But Asoka, the change was going to be made, and that was one of the election issues, that there won't be nepotism. But it's continuing. You can't say it's a part of the culture.
Yeah, that was the
one of the promises.
That's why we made the change.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not happening. So what next is the issue?
There are so many issues. Last Friday on Face the Nation, which is a program that belongs to this network, we discussed the avant-garde matter. I can tell you that members of the public, the viewing community, sent us about 41 SMSs, but 16 questions, that's all they spoke of. Now these 16 questions being raised by members of the public, and most of them all have one question that is common to all the SMSs, which is, why is it that this license was given almost on a monopolistic basis to one company? That is the question they want to know.
I think that's the right question. Now, when within the things happening in the media, I think people cannot understand what exactly the issue is.
Yeah.
Now, you pointed out the co-issue. That's the co-issue, but it's hidden among number of other political issues, business issues. It's not visible. It's, for a layman, it's very difficult to understand what exactly the issue is. Now, I think you have pointed out the correct point that should be discussed. So, if it's simple, if it's that simple, then we will be easily, we can address that issue. So, I think you got the right point. Correct.
Well, it's all about, this government came in on the basis of providing an equitable playing field, equity for all. And it is clearly, this particular transaction is rather questionable, because there was no request for proposal, there was no tender procedure, there was no procedure. Of course, they'll blame it on the need for national security, but this was a commercial transaction. What on earth has national security to do? And that is why they should have had an evaluation process. There was no evaluation process. And they estimate in these agreements, they estimate the profit at approximately $200 million. But for a 50% investment on the part of the government through Ratna Lanka, for a 50% investment, they were only promised a 35% profit share. And that sounds very inequitable.
And also, when you're talking avant-garde, you know, Asoka, many lawyers are ministers. Don't you see something fishy in this? I mean, this is, you have discussed this before.
Indeed. That's why I said last week that you see, it's people progress, don't they, Asoka? Today you are on our show, and if you're a lawyer, you may you may have represented us, and tomorrow you end up in Parliament as the Minister of Justice, and then we get into some trouble, and we've paid you at some point,
Yes.
and so we may legitimately expect that you will perhaps tweak the rules a little bit for us. But you, if you are being level playing field minded about it, you would tell us that, look, I'm not handling your file. When it comes to me, I'm going to hand it to somebody else. And that's what they do. I mean, Field Marshal Fonseca was sent to jail for a flawed tender process. He was the chairman of that tender board. He didn't declare his interest, and so they sent him to jail. Well, you know, perhaps now that's all been cancelled out, but at the time, that was the charge.
Yes.
It wasn't some kangaroo court, even though, you know. What can we do about inculcating this ambience of fairness, of ethically right things?
And to your question, as media we can't speak, but as a political analyst you can give your opinion, Asoka.
Sorry. Now, actually, the issues you are raising is more directed towards transparency and level playing field. So, I mean, from the individual side, he should take the right decisions at the right time, so that he is not influencing either party. And on the other hand, at the national level, we should have a mechanism in place so that such things is not up to the individual to decide, but the system or the mechanism will decide what should happen. So, looking back, I mean, if we cannot fix these things right now, then same thing will happen in the future. So, my worry is that we need to be more cautious about the mechanisms they are right now, and how we can have a different mechanism. For that we need to contribute, not about the individuals, not about the cases, but the mechanisms. I think if we can set the right mechanisms at this stage, because it's a transitional program right now, so if you can establish the right mechanisms in place, then in the future at least we can avoid these things, these appointments and investigations happening in the wrong direction. We can avoid that. Otherwise, as you quite rightly pointed out, there's a huge sums of money involved in this. So releasing certain amount can distort the full picture. Releasing those money to the media, to the individuals, the professionals who are directly involved with the investigation. Releasing, I mean, if you have large sums, then releasing a small amount is nothing, which is, when compared from the other side, it's a substantial amount. So, if you believe that it's a huge case, then we need to be very cautious while establishing the mechanisms.
That's true. You know, back again to this question about lawyers who are now ministers. It's really essential that these ministers make a statement, even if it is within the sanctity of parliamentary privilege in Parliament. It is really essential that they make a statement and say, look, these people I have represented before. Now they are the subject of investigation. However, when the files do turn up on my desk in the fullness of time, as it surely will, I will stand aside and let it carry on. There are at least 2 lawyers who've represented this company in the past, and they are now members of the government. They are ministers. And so, if I can see it, I can't understand why they can't. Why is that? Why do you think that they are with blinkers on? Why don't they remove the blinkers, Bandana?
Asoka, you know, you should ask the expert what he thinks.
I mean, it's ethics. They should first have the minimum responsibility on this matter, but I cannot answer why it's happening. So I'm curious to know how we can overcome this issue.
Perhaps, Bandula, I don't know about your school, but the school that I went to, the school by the sea, they had a class called ethics, and it was Mr. Brody who took that class. And I was often wondered what on earth Mr. Brody was going on about. I now understand.
No wonder we are all at sea thanks to the school by the sea.
We are at sea because people like your upcountry school didn't probably teach
But what
us.
happens is, you know, it's like say we were discussing about your dear Prime Minister. I mean, that's cool, isn't this? It's an old boys club sometimes.
It is
Don't you
very
want-
much an old boys club.
What do you think, Ashok?
Well, I have no comments on that.
But it's like the old boy network. All his friends, dear Prime Minister's friends, are now enjoying positions of some modicum of power and privilege. I'm not saying that they don't qualify, but sometimes it sours the people's mindset, because they see, oh, this person's there and that person's there. We have one of the Prime Minister's friends who's a parliamentarian from beyond Sri Lanka's territorial waters. A number of appointments been granted to him.
That you're referring to the governor of the central bank. But
No,
I'm so
well-
happy that the president does not belong to this old boys club.
To overcome this issue, I need to know what's the next step. I believe now having democracy within the party is
Yeah.
very essential.
Yeah.
If any leader comes to the power and if he can decide whatever he wishes, then that leads to these unnecessary issues. So if we can do something at this stage to ensure that the minimum democracy prevails within the party setup, within the party, then we can overcome most of these issues. That can be addressed while we will be discussing about the electoral reforms and new acts. So there we need to make sure that when we are registering or annually reviewing the registration, there should be a fair opportunity for the others in the party to get selected for certain positions, if based on the merit order.
And also, these people whom I refer to as our dear Prime Minister's friends, I use this term loosely, but they're friends of the government, and they may qualify for these jobs, but surely there must be better people.
True. I mean, now, yeah, in addition, if we can think of certain criteria or ethics that can be prevailing within the party setup, then, I mean, from outside we can certain challenge, but there should be a basis for selecting and not selecting.
Would financial support of a particular party that then wins the election, would that necessarily preclude you in your utopian world?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, now from the election onwards, the things happening before elections and after elections, then what responsibilities are there for those who supported them. But while we are in a different world, when we are exercising powers, there should be some ethics, and there should be some open process, so that we will be avoiding these things.
Do you know, Ashoka, on Face the Nation, in the run-up to the parliamentary elections,
Yes.
I brought this point up. And I'm delighted that Dasun Nediri Singer, writing for The Island, has written about it. And that is the call for campaign financing to be introduced. Now, this particular call has been made by EU monitors. Well, I'm proud to tell you that this network called for it long before they did, because we said it on the Face the Nation program, and we've got all the records, haven't we, Bandula?
Definitely.
We can play it like that and prove out what we're saying. Why can't I sort of disagree that this electoral system? I think that if you impose limits and a transparent process that covers campaign finance or political funding, then that is the key, because there will be, all this corruption will be eliminated, because Company A can donate as they wish within the limit, and so when there is a tender called, Company A has no problem about participating and perhaps even winning the tender, because like everybody else, it's transparent. why is it so difficult? If they pass the 19th Amendment ever so quickly, why can't they introduce such a thing into our parliament?
Well, that should be definitely included. The issue is, I think, to best of my knowledge, it's not the Constitution amendment that will address these issues, but the Election Act that follows. So right now we have, I am worried right now because now we are going to reopen 19th Amendment. We are going to discuss about the Constitution afresh. That will delay the basic things we were planning to do with respect to electoral reforms, the 20th Amendment we were calling, and then the following up election related act which will address these issues. But my humble request is that before opening the 19th Amendment, please complete the process so that we will have a better structure for the future, and then you can open it and discuss, because otherwise we will lead nowhere. Because if you open up the 19th Amendment, different people will come up with different ideas, then the extremists will be dominating these things, so it will lead nowhere. So at the end of the day, after 5 years or when the things are happening, we will have the same setup. So my humble request is, before discussing about the changes to the 19th Amendment or changing the Constitution as a whole, please complete the election related facts, the amendment and the act which will address these issues, all these issues. Then we can discuss the other issues later.
You know, talking about extremism, there's something that I've forgotten to say in all these shows, which I do apologize to the person I'm about to speak about. But our dear Prime Minister, in his role, as the leader of his party, but more importantly, as the Prime Minister, and in making his appointments, he seems to have forgotten something. And that is a gentleman by the name of Buddhika Patirana. He's been in Parliament for 10 years. And I'm sure Buddhika's neck is rather hurting him because he's having to look up. He's been in Parliament for 10 years, but he hasn't got a job yet. But somebody else, who's closely aligned to the Prime Minister, has now got a very senior ministerial role, having been brought in for what I call the back door, the national list. Now, that is food for thought. I'd really love the Prime Minister to give us a statement on that. Of course, he doesn't have to do anything, but it would have been nice if he recognized Buddhika's electoral success. Don't you agree?
And definitely, and he's a young MP who has a good following, and you know he has a voice. He has come out against corruption and other things for us.
Indeed. Sadly, it's we've lost all our time. We've had such a good time. Thank you very much, Asoka, for being on our program and onto our new set. And Bandula, thank you very much.
Thank you for us.
I take it you are going to celebrate this new set. But having spoken so openly today, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. On that note, I shall wish you a very good morning. God bless, take care, and come back.